You were not meant to be a slave to the grind. You were not meant to trade your life force for money. You can escape gravity. You can unlock your life. You got this. Let's go.
Hello and welcome to Unlock Your Life. I'm your host, Jennings Smith, and I'm super pumped to be here today because I'm in Ohio. I'm on vacation. I live in Charleston, South Carolina, but in the summer it gets super hot down there, 100% humidity, 100 degrees, and we come up here for the 4th of July, and I always came up to Ohio for the 4th of July, but after about a week, I would be completely stressed out. I'd want to go home. I had to get back to my construction company, had to get back to my job. And when I sold my construction company and I built a decently sized real estate portfolio, I told my wife, hey, I can stay up here a couple of weeks. I mean, I'm going to have to work a little bit when I want, as I want, but I don't have to race back home. And so for the last 3 years, I've spent about a month up in Ohio, the month of July, and I really have enjoyed it. So I'm coming to you live from Ohio, but I still got to get this podcast done. I get to get this podcast done. I want to get this podcast done because I have a great message. We had something exciting happen, and I wanted to share it with you. I own a 208 unit apartment complex in Tulsa, Oklahoma, with about 5 other partners, general partners, and then 23 investors that have invested in the deal. And we just took that deal full cycle, just refinanced it, got all the capital back out, did the BRRRR model, if you're familiar with that, which is buy, renovate, refinance, and repeat. And so we just completed that on a large deal. We cashed out $3.8 million. $3.8 million. We bought it for $5.5 million. It just appraised at $13.9 million. It's cash flowing positive after all debt service and all expenses, $30,000 a month. And that's also with leaving us an $800,000 bankroll war chest for future repairs that may be needed. So phenomenal deal. I'm super excited about it. And I want to walk you through, how does that happen? How do you make something like that happen? Because it definitely didn't happen overnight, but also it didn't take as long as you might think. So did I start with a deal of this size? Absolutely not. I started with a 12 unit, small deal. Then I closed a 19 unit, 42 unit, 63 unit. Then I closed this deal. So it was my 5th deal, I think, 5th or 6th. And this deal was on market. So I want to talk about, how did we find it? How do we raise the money for it? How do we structure it? How do we execute the plan? What were the problems that we had? How do we overcome buying something long distance, right? I said I was from Charleston, and this is in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And then what were the refinance results, and what's our future plan for the property? So we found it. It was on market. This deal was listed, and it was heavily distressed, half empty, with another portion of the people that lived there not paying. And it had 4 buildings that were down, like hard down. Floors cut up, concrete cut up, broken up, sheetrock gone, cabinets gone. No one had lived there in over a decade. Very distressed. The owner was essentially a slumlord. You know, he had barely anybody paying, barely scraping by, definitely wasn't fixing anything or maintaining the property. And so it was a big lift deal, and there weren't a lot of people that were totally attracted to it because it was going to be a lot of work and a lot of money and a lot of risk. So we walk into this deal, we put it under contract for $5.5 million, which is, I think, like $27,000 per unit, knowing that it was going to need another $15,000 per unit, or $2.5 million in renovations. And so we walk in, and the bank's lined up, and 3 weeks before closing, this bank backs out. The bank backs out. Oh, it's too risky. It's too much. COVID was broaching the horizon, and they were freaking out. And so we had to almost back out of the deal. We almost dropped the deal, and it did fall out of contract because the seller was so upset that we weren't closing on his timeline. And instead of taking a crappy bridge loan and high interest, we pushed forward to find another good local bank, and we did, with the help of our loan broker. Shout out to Afshan Kabani. She got us a great loan with Stride Bank, and we were able to get 5-year loan at a good interest rate, good terms, and we were able to close that deal. But to close it, we had to bring $2.5 million in cash to the deal. So we're borrowing the purchase price, 70%. We're borrowing the renovation budget of $2.5 million, 70%. And so we got a loan for $5.5 million, but we had to bring $2.5 million in cash to the deal. So we raised it $100,000 or so at a time, and we structured the deal where we would pay the investors 10% on their money while the money was in the deal. So every month they would get a check for a 10% preferred return payment. It was not an interest payment, but it was a preferred interest in the building. And so they got this 10% preferred return check monthly, and they also got 20% of the equity of the deal. So after refinance, they still got a check every month after they got all their money back. And we told them we were going to get it refinanced in 2 years or less, get them their capital back. So that was the plan. And we got the investors to come on board and commit to that. And we were able to keep 80% of the equity of the deal as general partners. So there are 6 partners that own 70% of that. And then there's another 6 that own little tiny pieces of that deal. So between myself and my cousin, we owned about 22, 23% of this deal. So we closed the deal, and that's how we structured the deal. And then we executed. So we had to get to work because we had a big project ahead of us. And the biggest thing that we needed to do was pick the right property manager. We had selected as a team a property management company that had a big portfolio, big construction arm. They were pretty well known. And I flew out to Tulsa, and I walked about 6 or 7 of their properties that they owned in Tulsa because they had a pretty big footprint there. And I was not like really disappointed, but I wasn't really impressed. There was trash on the ground. The construction quality was iffy, and their vacancy was high. A lot of their properties were 10, 15% or more vacant. And I was a secret shopper. I talked to the different managers, and it wasn't like major red flags, but I wasn't blown away by them. So as I'm looking around Tulsa and shopping comparatives and making sure that our rent projections were good, I stumble across this property, and it's beautiful, totally clean, totally full, good market rents, very, very good staff. And I'm talking to the staff, and I confide in them that I'm actually buying the property around the corner. So Josh says, well, that's actually a good property. I like the location. I think that your plan is sound. I think that it could work. Let's talk further. I want to introduce you to my mom, who owns the company. And so I meet Deborah, who's the owner of the property management company, and they do construction. And she tells me of the 3 or 4 other properties that they own in Tulsa. So I go and look at all those, and I meet the managers, the on-site managers there. And they're all beautiful properties, and they're all clean, and the construction quality is great, and they're all full. And I'm thinking this property management company is going to have their eye on the ball with us. We are going to be their biggest client, and they're going to be very focused on helping us achieve our plan versus being a little fish in a big pond with the other company. Maybe we should reconsider who our management company is. And so long story short, we did end up going with them, and that made a huge difference because they absolutely crushed it. They did very, very well. They did great with balancing the rent matrix, filling it up, not hurting the cash flow too badly, getting this renovation done, and getting us over the hump. And there were challenges. So I want to talk about that. One thing that was a major challenge was the electrician. He worked for 90 days and ran into a lot of problems that we did not know were there. And all of a sudden, he's over budget by a few $100,000, which is over 10% of our construction budget. And so we had to make that up. We had to do a general partner capital call, and one of the partners stepped up, threw down $100,000 to make up the shortfall, and was able to be reimbursed out of cash flow later, like 6 months later or more. But that was a big issue we overcame. There was another issue with refrigerator shortages, stove shortages, finding different alternative vendors, things taking longer, costing more, and pushing through these challenges to stay on track and to keep our rent roll growing. Because when we bought this, the rent roll was $55,000 a month. Every month we were collecting $55,000 to $60,000 a month, which seems like a lot of money, but not really when it's 208 units. That's an average rent of about $250 per unit. Now, remember, it was half empty. So as we filled it up and as we raised rents and as we brought it to market rent, we brought and grew the rent roll to $140,000 a month, which is what we're collecting now. And that's how the building was able to appraise for $13.9 million. Because in the commercial world, if you raise rents by 100%, you have essentially at least raised the value of that building by 100% in many cases. It's valued off of the net operating income. How much money does this building make? So if it's making 100 grand a year and now it's making 200 grand a year, well, it's twice as valuable. So that was our plan, was to buy something that was messed up, had problems, needed renovation, needed capital, but it was in a good area and it had a lot of potential. So we finished working the plan that took about 18 months, and now we start working on the financials of refinancing it. So the banks want to see 90% plus occupancy. They don't want to see a bunch of month-to-month leases. They want to see the renovations are done. They want to see that this property is stable, that every month they can count on a certain amount of rents being collected. And they know what the expenses are going to be because now they have a good track record of financials over the last 1 to 2 years. So we started working on that. We got our financials solid and we showed them 90 days of great collections, low expenses, and good cash flow. And so they've got their appraiser out there. He said, or she said, I'm not sure who it was, but they said it was worth $13.9 million. And the bank decided that they would loan us $9.45 million, $9.5 million against the property, right? They're not going to loan you the entire amount. It's just like a house. You have to have equity left in the deal. And so they gave us $9.45 million and our basis was $8.1 million. So we cashed out our first loan, paid that off, which was $5.5 million, and we paid our investors back $2.5 million, and there was $1.3 million left. So that's how we cashed out $3.8 million. 2.4 of that was paid back to the investors. That was the investor initial capital. But then the other $1.3 million, $1.4 million, a lot of that we set aside for future renovations and having a war chest. Some of it went to fees, refinance fees, which were almost $300,000. So it's expensive to do these big deals. There's appraisals, there's environmental studies, there's broker fees, there's bank fees, there's points out of loans, there's points into loans. It's expensive, but it's worth it because now we own an asset that we have, no capital in, and our investors don't have any capital in, and we've replaced it with a 10-year Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loan, and it's also non-recourse. Non-recourse means that we don't have to personally sign on the debt. If the debt goes bad, we lose the property, all we lose is the property. We don't lose our homes. We don't lose our other properties. They don't come after us and sue us. They just take the property back. That's a non-recourse loan. So as you grow your portfolio, it's good to get more and more of your debt into non-recourse debt that you're not personally liable for and personally guaranteeing. And I've returned all the investors' capital as well, which helps me to sleep better at night. So we refinanced this and we dispersed $200,000 or $300,000. We got the war chest built up, and now it's cash flowing $30,000 a month, and we're able to disperse that every month. So to me, who owns 11.5%, that's $3,300, $3,400 a month. And it's only going to keep growing, right? As we pay the debt down, more equity is built up. And as time marches forward, rents most likely will go up and that cash flow will increase and the value of the building will increase. And I think that in 10 years, even though the building's appraising at 13.9 now, it's possible that it could be worth 20 million or maybe more. I don't know. I don't know what the next 10 years are going to hold, but I know that holding real estate and having inflation working for me versus against me is going to be a good plan. So was it a good deal? Yes. Was it a big deal? Yes. Was it hard to get done? Yes. And I don't want you to be overwhelmed if you're listening to this because this is not where I started. However, I was closing this deal within a year and a half of closing my first multifamily deal. Do I own 100% of it? Absolutely not. But if I had tried to do this deal by myself, I never would have gotten it across the table. I wouldn't have been able to raise that much money at the time. I wouldn't have been able to qualify for the loan. And I probably wouldn't have done as well of a job managing it, right? We were flying out there every couple months, asset managing, weekly calls. A lot of work went into this, and it was definitely a team effort. But now my balance sheet at this refinance went up by $500,000 to $600,000, and my cash flow jumped up $3,300 a month in my passive income for the rest of my life. And it's only going to grow, both the nest egg and the income. And so is it worth it? Absolutely. Is it work? Yes. But I don't know of a more stable income stream that is not going away that you can invest in and create out of thin air just through sweat equity without putting millions and millions of dollars of your own cash into the deal. So that's our future plan, is to keep holding, and maybe we'll refinance it again in 10 years. Maybe we'll sell it. I don't know. We'll just have to see what the partnership decides to do. But that is the plan. So guys, I just wanted to give you a sneak peek into my business life, kind of some of my personal finances and how I structured that deal. And a lot of my deals are structured similarly to this. And if this is something that you like hey, I'm into real estate. I already own some rentals. I'd like to get into multifamily, or maybe you already own some multifamily and you'd like to do bigger deals. I have a Facebook group about it, My First Million in Multifamily. There's 24,000 people in there that are all sharing a passion for multifamily and growing that. So if you want to learn more about that, jump in the group. If you do, I'll give you a free PDF download, how I raised $90K for my first 12-unit deal. I'll also give you my pitch deck. We have a free deal analyzer, all that just for joining the Facebook group. It's not paid. There's no obligation. There's no cost. So jump in there and connect with me. And if you're enjoying the podcast, if you're enjoying the stories, shoot me a message. I'll respond. I read them all. I see them all, and I appreciate them. So guys, I'm going to bounce. I'm going to hopefully hit up Cedar Point and Kalahari Water Park, and we're going to Lake Erie. So should be a great time up in Ohio, and I'll check in with you guys later. Peace.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.